2019's Cats is probably one of the most infamous and unsettling box office bombs that we've seen in the past 20 years. It's a movie that had so much money and A-list talent poured into it, which had absolutely terrifying cat designs and was turned into a joke by the first trailer. Not only was the finished product a mess, but the making of it was just as odd. So today, I want to revisit this failure, to explore the troubled production, the massive fallout after it hit theaters, and offer up some of my personal thoughts on the project.
Is there a butthole cut of Cats? Like, is there a version of it out there where someone has given you a digital butthole, James?
For those unaware, 2019's Cats is based on the 1981 musical by the same name by Andrew Lloyd Webber, which is based on the 1939 poetry collection called Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats by T.S. Eliot. A feature film adaptation of this musical can actually be traced back to the early 1990s with Steven Spielberg. Spielberg wanted to make an animated version through Amblimation, which was a new subdivision of his production company, Amblin. He struck a deal with Andrew Lloyd Webber and Universal Studios, and he got screenwriter and playwright Tom Stoppard to pen the script along with some of the writers behind Toy Story. Simon Wells was in talks to direct this adaptation, who you may know as the director behind 2011's Mars Needs Moms. However, after Amblimation's film Balto bombed at the box office and effectively destroyed Amblimation, Cats no longer had a home and the project was dead in the water. That was until 2012, when the Tom Hooper directed adaptation of the musical Les Miserables hit theaters. This film was a huge success, grossing over $400 million on a $60 million budget and scoring 8 Oscar nominations while winning 3 of those. This gave Universal the confidence to put Cats into development once again, as they still own the rights, and several years later in 2016, Tom Hooper officially signed on to direct the flick. The screenplay would be written by Tom Hooper along with Lee Hall, and the casting went underway in 2018. Former Les Mis stars Anne Hathaway and Hugh Jackman were offered roles, but both turned them down. Instead, we would get the talents of James Corden, Rebel Wilson, Jason Derulo, Taylor Swift, Idris Elba, Sir Ian McKellen, Francesca Hayward, and Jennifer Hudson, just to name a few. Judi Dench was also attached, who was actually cast in the original 1981 London stage production, but shortly before opening she suffered an Achilles tendon injury that forced her to withdraw from the show. After various failed attempts with prosthetics and cat suits, the decision was made to use digital fur technology for all the cats in the movie. Filming kicked off on December 12th of 2018, shooting in the UK. It wrapped in April of 2019 and was sent off to post-production. And this is where some of the major problems popped up. In an interview with the Daily Beast in 2020, a member of the visual effects team called the post-production process as almost slavery, having worked 90-hour weeks for months with colleagues staying for days at a time sleeping under their desks. And reportedly, Tom Hooper was treating the visual effects workers horribly the entire time, being disrespectful, condescending, demeaning, and would send crew members individual emails degrading their work. As the story goes, Hooper just had no concept of how rotomation worked at all. Here's a quote from the Daily Beast article. Before visual effects artists fully render sequences for animated films, they normally show directors play blast, preview renderings that feature characters without color or texture. That allows the director to evaluate the motion before hours of work are done to flesh out things like color, texture, and lighting. Hooper, however, did not seem to grasp that process. Anytime the visual effects team wanted to show the director any animatics, the source said they had to fully render it. Otherwise, he'd say things like, "What's this garbage?" and "I don't understand, where's the fur?" Some aspects of the production, the source alleges, became simply absurd, like when Hooper would demand to see videos of actual cats performing the same actions the cats would do in the film. As you know, the source said, cats don't dance. And during this post-production process is where the infamous butthole cut comes from. Lots of people think that an original cut of the film, the visual effects workers added buttholes to the cats at the studio or the director's demand that were later taken out. However, the actual story is not as funny. Or maybe it's funnier depending on who you ask. Let me explain. According to an anonymous VFX crew member who emailed Ben Meckler, the initial process of adding fur to the actors had an unintentional byproduct where the cat's skin looked groomed or just folded in a way that really looked like very furry lady genitals and buttholes by accident. So this meant that some unlucky soul had the months-long job of combing through the film and removing every single cat butthole or genitalia. And once rumors of this got out, it sparked the meme and the hashtag #ReleaseTheButtholeCut, which was spoofing the Release the Snyder Cut campaign. There's also a rumor that Jason Derulo's bulge was so big they had to edit that out too. But that rumor was started by Jason Derulo, so who knows if it's true. The VFX team spent 6 months producing the film's 2-minute trailer, leaving just 4 months to finish the entire 110-minute film. But Universal did not want to move that release date at all, because if it premiered any later than December, then it wouldn't be eligible for the upcoming awards season. Yes, you heard that right, they wanted to make sure Cats was eligible for the upcoming awards season. This means they were working on it just hours before its world premiere on December 16th of 2019. And in fact, they were working on it even after the prints were sent out to theaters. There were dozens of shots in the completed film with CGI glitches and errors, such as a scene where Judi Dench's human hand with wedding ring and all peeks through instead of a cat paw, or tails moving independently from dancers, or whiskers disappearing. It was just a complete disaster. In its opening weekend, thousands of theaters were notified by Universal that they would receive an updated version of the film just a few days later with, quote, some improved visual effects. For a finished title that was already released, this was practically unheard of in the business. Unfortunately, the creator of the musical, Andrew Lloyd Webber, got next to no creative input on the film, aside from writing a new song for the movie with Taylor Swift called Beautiful Ghosts, which ended up getting a Golden Globe and Grammy nomination. It seems like Webber knew this movie would be a disaster, as a year before the film hit theaters, he sent a letter to Universal which said, "You've got a car crash on your hands unless you get a grip on this thing." But he never got a reply. So now that we've discussed the making of the film, let's talk about its release and fallout.
I think it could really only be done by a director like Tom Hooper. He understands the spectacle of Cats.
Cats hit theaters on December 20th of 2019, with an opening weekend gross of $6 million. It came in number 4 in the box office behind The Rise of Skywalker, Jumanji: The Next Level, and Frozen 2. Domestically, it would make $27 million, and overseas, it would rake in $48 million, for a total worldwide gross of $75 million. And honestly, I am shocked it made even that much. But I suppose this is one of the longest running musicals of all time, and lots of people will probably hate watching it, so maybe that accounts for some of the ticket sales. Against a budget of $95 million, not even factoring in marketing, distribution, or all that other stuff, that made this a box office bomb, with it having an estimated loss of around $70 to $100 million. And it's pretty easy to see why it bombed. From the very first trailer, this film was getting clowned on by anyone who saw it, as the cat designs are absolutely terrifying. The pushback was very reminiscent of the first trailer we got for the Sonic movie, but unlike that film, Universal did not want to go through a redesign. What I find very odd is that Universal's intended demographic for Cats was younger female theater goers, trying to counter-program against Star Wars: Rise of Skywalker. You can really tell this was the case by how much the marketing hinged on the involvement of Taylor Swift, who in reality has a very tiny part in the film, even though she helped write the new song. But just having Taylor Swift in your movie doesn't keep you afloat unless it's fully a Taylor Swift project. Just compare the box office numbers of Life of a Showgirl or the Eras Tour to 2022's Amsterdam or this movie. It also doesn't help that Frozen 2 came out at the same time, which shared a lot of that younger female demographic, and was simply a better movie with better name recognition. And of course, the horrible reviews kept many people away from the theater. Cats currently boasts a 19% critic and 53% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, in addition to a 2.8 out of 10 on IMDb and a 1.3 out of 5 on Letterboxd. It also scored heaps of Golden Raspberry nominations and awards such as Worst Picture, Worst Director, Worst Screenplay, Worst Actress for Francesca Hayward, Worst Supporting Actor for James Corden, Worst Supporting Actress for both Judi Dench and Rebel Wilson, Worst Screen Combo for any half-human, half-feline hairballs, and Worst Screen Combo for Jason Derulo and his CGI neutered bulge. Not only did this film land on countless lists for the worst movie of 2019, but it also placed on many lists for one of the worst movies of all time. It's definitely one of those movies that makes you question how it happened at all. Like, how did so many people say yes and approve millions of dollars to go towards this nightmare? As for director Tom Hooper, it seems like Cats scored him some time in director jail, because as of the time of this video, he hasn't made a project since. But IMDb says he has a movie titled Photograph 51 coming out, so maybe some of that Oscar clout from Les Mis and The King's Speech hasn't worn off yet. At the 2020 Oscars, James Corden and Rebel Wilson would come out in cat suits and say this while introducing the award for Best Visual Effects.
Nobody more than us understands the importance of good visual effects.
it seems like Corden and Wilson were blaming the film's failure on the VFX team, who had to endure 90-hour work weeks removing CGI buttholes and being verbally abused by Tom Hooper. So, if you needed any more reason to hate James Corden, then there you go. A compositor at MPC who was brought in to help fix the film would respond to this comment on Twitter by saying this: "Hey guys, I haven't watched all the Oscars, but I assume these two were really classy and thanked me for working 80-hour work weeks right up until I was laid off and the studio closed." Right? Before we go on to some of my thoughts, I would like to share some reactions to the film. Battlefield Earth screenwriter J.D. Shapiro said that this film usurped his as the worst of all time. Additionally, Jason Derulo, who played Rum Tum Tugger, vocally and passionately defended this film as one of the greatest pieces of art ever made. Here's a funny quote I wanted to share. "When I saw the trailer, I got chills down my spine. I thought it was going to change the world."
Basically, we were all naked on set every single day. It's just like balls out, everybody.
I think Jason Derulo was right. This movie did change the world. It made the world worse. There's some evil energy permeating off this film. When it comes to the plot, I'm not sure how much I can blame on the movie and how much I can blame on the original musical. But I was surprised how little of a plot this movie actually has. It's pretty much just an hour and a half of a cat coming in, singing a song about their personality, and then leaving. Like, I'm Bustopher Jones and I like eating. I'm Gus the theater cat and I like theater. I'm Rum Tum Tugger and I'm the horny cat. There's like this loose framing device of a ball where an old cat chooses one cat who gets to be reincarnated, and then there's this evil magical cat who is stealing all the competition so he wins. But I don't know. Maybe this just isn't a story that translates well to the screen. I think the only universe where this would work is if it was animated. But even then, it still doesn't have a reason to exist. I had to include this Letterboxd review by Patrick Walsh just because it cracked me up so much. Not sure why this didn't work. It follows a classic 3-act structure. Act 1, cats introduce themselves. Act 2, cats continue to introduce themselves. Act 3, unclear.
There are cats of every kind. Wise cat, the cool cat, the theater cat, the fat cat.
Obviously, the visual effects are horrible and scary. This isn't the fault of the VFX team. As we've discussed, they didn't have enough time to work on it, and the digital fur technology was just a bad idea from the start. Even now, after the film was updated with improved visuals, it still looks unfinished. The cats don't blend into the world at all, and nearly every shot looks like they were superimposed onto the backdrop. The CGI cat forms also land pretty squarely in the uncanny valley. Honestly, while watching this movie, I found it to be closer to something like Mars Needs Moms than something like The Aristocats, which, if you didn't know, is literally a musical about cats. The sense of scale also just pissed me off. First off, the cats compared to their surroundings just look weird, since they aren't cats. They are humans who look like cats who have been scaled down to the size of a cat. But they still have the body shape of a human, so they look like tiny humans, and it never looks natural with how everything in the environment is scaled up. And then they throw other animals in there and it gets even more messed up. Why are the mice in this movie so tiny? If these cats are supposed to be the size of cats, why are the mice the size they would be to normal humans? They should have been way bigger. Like, the mice are pretty much the same size as these nightmare-fuel cockroaches. Don't even get me started on the scale of the food that they eat, which is just all over the place and changes from scene to scene. They also do something in this movie that I have a problem with in other movie musicals, where they never let a song just fully play out. They have to insert some dialogue or quip in between the verses and choruses. They can just never let a song play out in full without stopping and having Rebel Wilson do some stupid cat pun, and it really kills the momentum of any song they are singing at any given time. As for the performances, they range wildly across the board. You have some actors like Sir Ian McKellen, Jennifer Hudson, and Judi Dench who are honestly giving way more energy and effort into this movie than it deserves. Like, if you were to extract their performances in this movie and put them in a vacuum, they are pretty damn good. Then you have performances that are more in the middle, like Idris Elba's or Taylor Swift's, where they are phoning it in to a certain degree, but are not outright terrible. I mean, say what you will about Taylor Swift, but she's a good singer. And finally, you have the performances which are just stomachache inducing, like Rebel Wilson, James Corden, and Jason Derulo's. Wilson and Corden are relying too heavily on slapstick and toilet humor, and it feels very out of place in my opinion. And then there's Jason Derulo, where his performance is passable at best, but his comments made about the film just can't let me take him seriously at all. All I was thinking about while watching him is how he got chills from the trailer and how they had to CGI his bulge out. All in all, It's just a terrible movie. But it's one of those films where it's so bad it's good. Personally, I didn't have a good time watching it, but that's because I watched it alone and sober. I bet if I had a few drinks in me and I watched it with some friends, it would have been a blast. But it's definitely one of those movies you have to tune in and out of, as a majority of it is just straight up boring. But every once in a while, something insane will happen, which you can point and laugh at. Like James Corden smashing his balls. Hilarious. But I've said all I need to say about this monstrosity, and it's time to wrap it up.
And the reviews, oh, shocking. I saw one that said, this is the worst thing to happen to cats since dogs, right?
As soon as the decision was made to rely on digital for technology, this film was just a disaster waiting to happen. It had a director who didn't understand the visual effects, not enough time or money was spent on these effects, and some actors were just completely wrong choices. It totally bombed commercially and critically, and possibly the only thing people remember about it was a scrapped version of the film that featured buttholes. So that's the catastrophic failure of Cats. But what are your thoughts on the film? Have you seen it? If you have, I'm so sorry. This has been Tom from Isenhart Productions, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week. And here's a little clue for next week's video.
Is Guy here? You know what? He just left.